there's no difference between where we are and where we were in 2007-8. I think what we're talking about is really alternative political leadership. Kenyans are the ones who are behind this politics of ethnic mobilization. You cannot change the politics of a society intellectually. I think what we're talking about is really alternative political leadership. Yeah. If you look at where we are today, if you look at where the political leadership is converging, it is converging to the status quo that we have been trying to change for more than 30 years, unsuccessfully, and which has itself refused to adopt progressive politics, because this particular group is probably even more retrogressive than Moi. Because
and if we're going down that direction, wouldn't the honorable thing then be for these people who have now agreed and shaken hands to accept that, look, we are part of the problem, we can't change this, fall on your sword and look for a process that will birth new, fresh, and perhaps different thinking in terms of our politics?
It's not going to come from them.
If it can't come from them, they're the ones who are leading the process of change.
No. I don't think there's anybody leading a process of change now.
What are they leading?
What you're having now is a process of self-preservation.
So both sides are just self-preserving?
No, politically.
Yes.
Yes.
And what about this agenda that they're trying to sell to us?
You see, it's not the first time. If you look at what happened in 2007, we got to the brink. Yeah,
we had a handshake.
People looked and they saw the
edge.
the edge of the cliff. They sort of had a handshake. We had they formed a government of national unity. They then did the constitution because it was in the agreement. But even that constitution, what actually came out of it, if you look at the structure of the executive, for instance, it's not something anybody wanted. Why we ended up with an American style presidency, even now, none of them can explain to you. Nobody supports it. Nobody supported it. But that's what emerged out of it. And then we had, had all those processes. So what did happen is that the transformational moment threatened the entire political sort of elite structure. So they closed ranks and they stabilized the situation. So our political agreements have not been for change. They have been for containment of the potential implosion.
That's why I keep thinking to myself as we are talking, if madness is doing the same thing the same way and expecting different results, why are you even giving either Uhuru Kenyatta or Raila Odinga the benefit of the doubt here?
Because there's no alternative at that point. We have to bring this process to closure. And those were the main players. So you bring it to closure. Yeah, because that's what it set out for. It set out to pursue the electoral. It didn't just out to solve the fundamental problems of Kenya.
It set out to solve the
crisis. The crisis. It set out to resolve the crisis. It was generated by the crisis, by the 2017 presidential election crisis. Now, there's no difference between where we are and where we were in 2007-8. Because the only difference is we didn't have as much violence. But we had a lot of violence. And in fact, this has even been more protracted than 2007 and 8. But still, we're saying what we have ended up with is another containment situation. Because whatever is going to come out of this is going to be a compromise. Not between, once they say it's a stalemate, it is not going to be transformational. That we can say without fear of
Some people think of you as a conscientious Kenyan. Why then back something that is containment, that will take us to the same place, perhaps even worse? Why you as a person would you back that?
Well, they have that alternative is to just walk away from it.
And do something else. It doesn't
Not
have to be
necessarily
walking
do
away.
something else.
Yeah.
Why do something else?
Okay, let me put it to you this way. You, over the period of 2017 and in the periods prior, have built a certain kind of political clout. Not political, but clout amongst the public. Being the person that has represented some of the ideological positivity of NASA. The question is, why sit there knowing this instead of, putting your mind, you and other people who are like you, to something that could actually birth something new for Kenya, rather than back an elite handshake, a period of containment, possibly a disagreement down the line, and then further violence? Why?
You cannot change the politics of a society intellectually. Yeah. You can make people see the situation that they are in. But if you look at the politics of the country, we are ethnically polarized country. Even now, the troops, so to speak, are backing these two people. Then probably, there's also people like William Ruto and others who are also trying to mobilize. So we are in the politics of this ethnic deal making, ethnic mobilization. That's the politics. The question is, you have to ask yourself, when you say alternative, alternative for who?
Alternative to this.
But Kenyans are the ones who are behind this politics of ethnic mobilization. They're the ones who have mobilized themselves.
Kenyans have a part to
into
play.
Ethnic.
Yes.
So these are the politics of Kenya.
Kenya has a part to play with it. Kenyans have a part to play in it.
They're the ones who are.
And they have voted in those ways in the past. But we both know that a poor Kikuyu is the same as a poor Luo, is the same as a poor Kalenjin. There are certain other commonalities that we have other than the ethnicities that we run to. Those are the ones that seem to be threatening us down the road, perhaps even more than the ethnic polarization. Why not think about those things?
Because if you go and call those people and you try and call them, mobilize them around those issues, those issues will be stamped by identity, solidarity, ethnic solidarity.
So then we try the same thing.
No, that's where they end up. So, saying that there is, so when you talk about alternative politics, okay, then alternative for who? Because this is the politics that the people you are talking about are themselves a part of. Yeah, they are part of this politics. Okay. So you cannot, they say that, look, that you're able to do that by force of persuasion, that these politics are potentially unsustainable. They are actually unsustainable. Or that there's a disconnect between the politics that they are practicing and the condition and the grievances that they have, that their very politics which they support are the very politics responsible for the grievances. Because if you listen to people, they are now sort of looking for how to back their ethnic horses, which are the horses they're going to back for 2022. That's the politics they want. Yeah. So even when you talk about it, so it's not that simple that you can just say, okay, what's the alternative?
Entrepreneurship is something that is, in some quarters, defined as selling people something that they don't think they need, even though you can see the need for it. That I guess is a point that I'm trying to make it. But let's move to another area which is a bit of your wheelhouse, which is debt, the economy.
Let me back you up to the previous subject and say the point that the factor, what we've been, I think the thing is, I mean, since these are, you see, when you say Kenyans, that's a very loaded statement. Because you're already assuming that, you implies that there's a nation called Kenya. And you know, my position has been there is no nation called Kenya. What we have is a group of ethnic
states,
sub-nationalities. So, and the question has always been, and when we say, if this is who we are, then what you want to negotiate is political power sharing, and what kind of structure, political superstructure, that can make these ethnics sort of live together. And until we solve that problem,
then we do the same thing.
Then we're going to do the same thing. But the thing is, what most important thing I think in intellectual contribution to this thing is to framing what your problem is. Now, the challenge we have is one of where these elites, particularly the Jubilee type, the status quo, is that they deny that. The ideology is to pretend that they're still stuck in the 1960s politics that you can unite the nation and get rid of ethnicity. But obviously that's because that serves their economic interests. Okay? So for me, the political thing you need to do is not to go and set up a different stall and start sort of talking about a completely different alternative, but to force these ethnic leaders to frame, so that we frame the right questions that we should be addressing. What is our political problem? What are the political problems that are undermining democracy in Kenya? Yeah? And the political problem is, there is a problem of, fundamentally, of not acknowledging that identity politics is important. And these issues of inclusion, and pretending that, oh no, all politics should be about development. Kenyans should, that's not true anywhere in the world. Okay? Maybe Tanzania is close to the country, which is sort of, but few other places are. And once you had sort of 50 years of the kind of politics we have, it's very difficult to turn back that clock. So what we need is a political alternative is probably not political party sort of competing with these people, but more of a social movement which frame the right questions. And in fact, when we've made progress is when we have had social, if you look at even the multi-party, and put not multi-party, if you look at multi-party, where it came from outside of the political system. Yeah? And finally became impossible for the political system to ignore. Okay? If you look at the constitution, it came from outside the political system. We were doing ufongamano, we were doing all these things. Moi was resisting them. The opposition actually was not really big on these things until we pushed this agenda before 1997 election. The opposition was more about the former opposition. They were already in parliament. People like Kibaki, by the way, they were really never keen on the constitution. It's when it became an issue they could not ignore that they then adopted. And you can see, even now, they actually don't believe in it. It's not conviction.
It's something they have to live with.
It's something they have to live with. So what we need, in my own sense, is that is the same thing. You need social forces outside of the politics, sort of defining the issues, that we need to resolve as a country. Okay, and then forcing those issues onto the political agenda. So what you need is a horizontal force that is putting pressure on the whole system.
And getting it to acknowledge it.
And pushing the agenda to them.
Okay.
So, because my concern, and that was the point, he said, look, if you look at, let me remember, you see, one of the questions that I ask yourself, you read those issues, and you read the 9, and you can you see the underlying questions, and we know the underlying questions and the underlying problems that those issues are speaking to, and then you hear Uhuru pronouncing himself that he's behind this, and then the question I ask you, he can say that with his political, but is he prepared? Is he emotionally and psychologically prepared to confront his own demons and his family's sort of legacy in the creation of these problems? The question is,
let me put that same question.
Let me finish so that we come to whatever. I was going to go both. Yeah. Is Uhuru prepared to go to Taita and sit with Taita people and have a conversation on land justice and land restitution and probably most of the coast? Yeah, a fundamental problem in this country, in fact, at the core, of this clinging to power. Why power in Kenya? People are willing to sort of fight. Is economic, because we probably have one of the political elites that has the most entrenched economic interests in the country, and one of the most liberal regimes in terms of being able to use that position in power to enrich yourselves. So the whatever of business and interest, and this goes back to the Dewa Commission of 1971, which allowed people to do business. Now, Uhuru Kenyatta is the poster child of that system. Yeah, the divide between his business and his political interests is very difficult to make. Even now, he's talking about Agenda 4. When you look at each of those items, you can see where there is certain sort of private benefits. Is Uhuru willing that we put this agenda on the table and we say from now on, we are not going to allow people to be in power to pursue private benefit? So it's one thing to say you are fighting corruption by running around couriers who have been used to sort of loot money from the budget. Well, the fundamental corruption is that the amount of conflict of interest between the man sitting in saying he's fighting corruption and the benefits is just pervasive. This sort of level of conflict of interest, I don't think it is actually something that would be. Even Berlusconi, wasn't this bad, and you could see how problematic and how much of a crisis that created. You have president, and they are in every business in the country, and there is no attempt at all, no process to try and separate his public and private interests. In other countries, these things are supervised. Yeah, there's ways of supervising and putting sort of things in blind trust and all sorts of things, that kind of thing. There's absolutely nothing. He's there with his family, wielding power, cutting deals. The same thing, you look at his deputy, he's trying to catch up. Yeah, he's just copying.
Okay. The same political system that exists, that has allowed for Uhuru Kenyatta to become a president for whom public office and private interests don't seem to have a line between
There's no
them.
line, yeah.
Is the same political system that Raila Odinga exists in, and perhaps has also benefited from in the same way. Him, his lieutenants, and a large part of the NASA and opposition brigade. Is Raila willing to look at himself in a mirror and say, look, when we go back to Kisumu, I'm really going to resolve this whole molasses issue. I'm going to resolve the fact that in some way I have contributed to the leading of politics that has taken up this ethnic identity and used it as well as a weapon rather than an acknowledgement to move on.
I don't know.
Have you asked him that?
No.
Will you ask him that?
No.
Why not?
I already raised these questions not in a manner that I'm raising them, and saying, look, if this is, and I asked these questions. I asked this question at the outset. You went and signed this thing with Uhuru, and that is going to, and I'm reading this, and I'm reading what it's saying, and I'm asking myself, are people psychologically prepared to deal with, to face up to these issues? Even before getting answers, yeah, I mean like verbal answers, just out of experience, was the realization that people, just the process that is envisaged is not one to deal with those issues. So I don't have to ask the questions because it's quite clear, because I know the answer. It is, it is not a process, and even look at the process that has emerged. If people are prepared to deal with those issues, the process which has emerged, the team that has emerged, is not one which lends itself to what you see there is a lot of status quo people. So those cancers have come in different ways. So I don't actually have to pose the question. But the thing is, so it speaks to one thing, but if you put it to the test of those questions, I know what the answer are, and the answer is that it is not sort of equipped. It is sort of superficially going to gloss over. That's the thing, it's containment.
Yes.
Contain the political crisis.